It's free! It's online!
Online.
Yes.
Alright.
Just-
Internet is everything now.
Yes.
Welcome to today's session of Mind the Gaps. Today we're going to have a discussion on JC mathematics, right? And some of these burning questions that students always have, but they may be afraid to ask. And we are very happy to have with us today our team leads for JC mathematics. They are teacher Kishan and
Hello.
teacher James.
Hi.
Let me just have a brief introduction of both of them. Teacher Kishan has a Bachelor of Science degree, right, from the University of Singapore, and he has obtained a first-class honours there. All right, that's the honours with the highest distinction in pure mathematics. Am I right?
Yep.
And Kishan has got many years of experience teaching both IB and JC mathematics. Now, Teacher James. Teacher James also graduated from National University of Singapore, but from the Bachelor of Engineering. Then he moved on to further his studies and pursue a master degree in which university? University of Edinburgh. Yeah, and he was a Chevening scholar there. And after graduation, he actually is a PhD scholar, and he has many years of experience teaching at the university. Let's move on to our very first question. Right, to prepare well for the A-level exam, is practicing the 10-year series good enough?
Well, I think for this question, that's a good question. I think certainly practicing the 10 series would certainly help in preparing. But actually, I would want to actually add, I think a lot of students, they're very hardworking. So they'll take like 10 series and they start practicing and practicing. But I think the key is really about practicing the right question and the suitable question. So I think it's really about, for a certain topic, practice a variety of questions.
Actually, on that note, I would also like to add that, when you think about 10-year series, right? The 10-year series is 10 years. Now, we have to understand that in 2017, the syllabus changed from the syllabus code 9740 to 9758. So there is an emphasis that is being placed in the new syllabus, and that is real-world context question. And it's been explicitly mentioned in the syllabus outline. That was not mentioned in the previous syllabus. Now, if you are going to just practice 10-year series and hope to go into the A-levels with just 10-year series, all you would have done is just expose yourself to real-world context questions in 4 years. 17, 18, 19, 20. So instead of just focusing on TYS alone, my advice, and Teacher James probably shares the same sentiment, is to also focus on the tutorial questions. Because you have to understand, your teachers make a conscious effort selecting questions catering to this real-world context, adjusting to this new syllabus.
Yeah.
And on top of tutorial questions, remember, attempting all tutorial questions, attempting all supplementary practice questions in tutorial. On top of doing TYS and tutorial questions, also make sure to do your revision packages. Remember, for every major exam in school, mid-year JC1, promos JC1, mid-year JC2, prelims JC2, there is a revision package given to students. Attempt all the questions. Also, on top of these 4 major exams, your teacher will prepare a revision package for A-levels. Attempt all the questions for revision packages. Your teachers are not going to be unrealistic. They distill questions, not 20 or 30 in a chapter, but a reasonable amount like 10. Attempt these questions in each revision packages. It prepares you for the real-world context questions that you will not get enough practice in for the TYF.
But James, I remember just now you said about practicing a variety of questions, So besides the 10-year series and maybe the tutorial questions, do you have a variety of different types of questions for them?
So I think the key thing is that over here, actually what we do is that we actually shortlist and actually we specially design question to cover the question from the more basic foundational building to the more intermediate and to the more advanced type of question to cater to students at different level to be able to handle. And of course, on top of this layering, we will then select for each topic different question types so that you get to be exposed to the different question types. The key thing here is that a lot of JC students, which you all have been going through now, not facing a lack of time.
Yeah.
So
Time is an issue.
yes,
So I think scaffolded learning.
yes,
That's what we
right.
need. Yeah, to optimize our time.
That's good advice. Variety of questions as well as not only practice to make perfect,
Yeah.
your answering of questions, but to perfect also your practices, right? By giving
Yes.
yourself variety of questions as well as
Question at different levels.
Correct.
choose
So
the
that-
right kind of questions,
correct.
relevant questions to
Yep.
practice, right? Okay, another burning questions all students have, whether it is primary, secondary, or even at JC. I suppose in the university they may still have this problem,
Yes.
which is carelessness.
Oh dear.
Right? How to avoid or minimize the chances of making mistakes in the exams.
Now, on this topic of careless mistakes, student asked me whether H2 Maths got something like error carried forward. Now, let me explain what error carried forward means. Error carried forward is something like this, in that suppose you make a mistake in part 1 due to careless. If there was error carried forward, then if you take the wrong answer but still do the correct method for the subsequent parts, you'll still get full credit because it's error carried forward. You should still get full credit. But sadly, we do not have error carried forward in H2 Maths. What we have instead is in our mark scheme either method mark or answer mark. What this simply means is that if you were to make a mistake in part 1 due to careless, then sadly, because the answer is wrong, right, in part 1, when you use the answer for the subsequent parts, you clearly don't get the answer. You get the method mark, but you don't get the answer mark. So this means there's a double penalization for a mistake that you made in part 1. And this can only guarantee you, just go and check any A-level question, this can only guarantee you at most 50% of the question.
Because that's a waste, isn't it?
Yes,
Especially for a question that students started out knowing how to answer, but they can't get the full marks because
Exactly.
of carelessness.
Exactly. I think we can all agree that we want to avoid careless mistakes.
Mhm.
And if not that, minimize it. Now, when we talk about careless mistakes, there are 2 types. The first is transfer errors. That means students never copy properly, calculator never copy properly, etc.
It's true carelessness.
Exactly. I cannot stand those kind of careless mistakes. And then the second kind is just the really computational errors. For the first kind, the copy errors or the transfer errors, I tell my students to check every step. That means from your calculator, you see whether you copy properly, every step. And for working to working, see whether you copy properly. And finally, whether you copy the numbers correctly from the question. And for the computational errors, I tell my students to be kiasu. Just check every step. And when you see something as basic as 1 plus 1, you just came to the calculator. Just be kiasu. Don't trust yourself too much. I want to go a bit further. When we talk about careless mistakes, it's either students spend too much of time checking step by step and then don't have enough time for the subsequent questions, in which case they don't complete the paper, or that they decide to not maybe just do the working and check for careless mistakes later, but in the later part of the question, they realize there's something difficult and they spend too much of time not having enough time to go back and check the question that they want to check in the beginning. So what I think we should understand is that we got to go into the exam with a game plan. You are given 3 hours, 180 minutes. What you want to do is, for each question, if it's 180 minutes for 100 marks, that means 1 mark is 1.8 minutes, correct? So for every question that you have, you look at the marks, you multiply that by 1.8 minutes. That's the time you're supposed to spend on that question. You cannot go beyond that. Okay. What you'll do with this time is you'll multiply this time by 5/6.
5/6.
So this is what I like to call the 5-6 rule.
Okay.
I do this with my JC students and they seem to love it. So you do the 5-6 rule. So what this means is that for each question, you spend a good 10 to 20 seconds doing the 5-6 rule. 5-6 rule, 5-6 rule, 5-6 rule, 5-6 rule. And by the end of the paper, now this means if you don't have time to check for careless, that's fine, because applying the 5-6 rule for each question ultimately gives you 30 minutes by the time you're done with the paper to go back and check for careless mistakes.
So you get about 1/6 of the time for each question at the end, right?
Exactly, and that's a good 30 minutes. So if you go in to the exam with no game plan, what's going to happen is just going to end up becoming flustered for especially the harder questions. We don't want that. We want a game plan. If you're struggling with a question, just follow the 5-6 rule. If you cannot finish it by then, go on to the next question and come back to it later.
I think that is very, very good advice.
Yes.
I think for some of us who may be lost in this, So I think, can I just summarize and you see whether what I say is correct? So assuming the question is a 4-mark question, so you take 4 marks times 1.8 minute, the question, right?
7.2.
And you times 5/6.
Yes.
Right? That is
6
the maximum minutes that you should be spending on that question.
Exactly.
Why 5/6 is because 1/6 of the time taken per question, put it right behind for the students to do overall checking. Am I right to say that?
Yep.
Okay, I think this rule is fantastic. I think
love
students, we should try to adopt this.
Actually, on that note, I do this with all my students to the point where they become dependent on the rule. But I think I just want to make a slight digression here. This is a rule that you cannot expect your teacher to do for you. This is a rule you got to do on your own with your tutorial.
You should habituate in there, right? For
So
every
that
question.
what happens is that you train yourself on inner alarm. So that by the time you reach the exam, your body just automatically just knows what to do. So yeah, I think it's not something that you need to depend on teachers on, but something you got to just bring in and internalize into your schedule, your routine
I
schedule.
think if they were to be very conscious about applying this rule, they wouldn't have to start calculating next time. Every time they
that's the
see,
thing.
okay, 4
Yeah.
4-mark question,
Yeah,
this is about how many marks
I
that I
agree,
should
I
be
agree.
spending on.
I agree.
It becomes quite natural for them.
I agree.
Yeah.
True. That's right. Actually, hearing all the great advice from teacher Kishan, actually, there's one thing I just want to add is that I think a lot of students they have heard a lot of so nagging from teacher, parents. Just double check what you have done so that you don't do all those transfer error and things like that. I think a lot of time is really about habit. I think once you get the habit there, then it becomes not a chore. And actually, the other thing that I noticed that a lot of students actually heard all this so-called advice, but they can't resist in terms of doing that. That's why you still see a lot of students still making this kind of careless mistake. It's still very common. They can't resist. And the key reason why a lot of students resist, which I hear from many of them, is that first, they find it's a waste of time. I got no time to do the question. You still ask me to double check again. I'm losing the time.
That's why they should do it in the normal practice,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So actually, what I always tell them is that actually this kind of check is only a split-second check. Just do the earlier transfer error to double check again. It's a split-second thing. Not even 1 second you can do it. So actually, it's a misconception. Actually, you don't really take up a lot of your time. Not because of that, but then the benefit is tremendous because you save 50% of the mark that what Teacher Kishan I just mentioned. And not only that, a lot of times students sometimes they come back, then they so-called do the check. Maybe at the end of the day they got a bit of time. Then they discover, oh no, I made a kind of mistake at the front. Then behind all my working all affected. Then they have to panic, redo and everything. And because towards the end, maybe they only got very little time, they start to make other kind of mistake. What they could have done correctly because they rush, they amend, end up, although they're supposed to be correct method or other part is correct, end up also get it wrong. So it's a worse off situation. They need to understand that actually that investment in the split second of checking is actually worth a lot of, it's really worth the while.
Yeah.
I think one of the really careless mistakes was really copying from the calculator, for the final answer.
Yeah.
Like 248 is the final answer, but they'll put there 284.
Exactly.
Wow, this is really, as parents, when we see it, up it. But these are really conscious effort. Every step of the way that they need to make sure that they copy it. I think that leads us to the next question also on when they come back with that 30 minutes to check the questions, some of them check. The answer is wrong. So do they go and change everything, or should they check one more time? Maybe what they check is actually wrong, but the initial answer was correct. So what do you think? It's just like when you cross the road, you have to look right, you have to look left, then you look right again before you cross. So is there this kind of strategy that we should use?
Okay. The thing about this 5-6 rule is that it only works with practice, right? So when you say, okay, suppose you go back and check and you realize it's a mistake. Now this mistake could be a conceptual error, in which case I will address that later. Let's talk about careless mistakes. Now if it's careless mistake, then all you have to do is just change the numbers. It shouldn't affect it too much. Now if it's a conceptual error, then that's an entirely different thing. So then I'll be concerned. Now you have to understand that if this is something you've done with practice, then you had an inner alarm. We talk about A-level questions. It's pretty much standard. With enough practice, following this rule, even though there's conceptual error, there should be enough time that you train yourself for within the 30 minutes to be able to complete and correct the mistake and move on to the next question for potential mistake. It's not only enough to know this role, you have to apply this role. And that starts with practice from your tutorials now, your homework assignments, your revision, your mini exams like common tests, block tests, and even the major exams to hopefully prep you for the A-levels. If you do this from the start, I'm not going to say it's foolproof, but the chances are very low. It should work to your favor.
Maybe one more thing to add is just about to build that habit. I think the habit is very, very important because it will help you to subconsciously do things and you won't waste time.
Many students also felt that there are a lot of formulas to remember, right, for H2 maths. Any tips for, telling them any methods, in which they can memorize them better?
Yeah, I think for mathematics subject, really you can't run away from formulas because it's actually everywhere. Being good student, and the teacher say this is important, you must know it. So a lot of students they're quite they're going to memorize. Well, I think that is really pure memorizing. Now, to me, I think the key is really about internalizing this mathematical formula. Okay, so what do I mean by internalizing? It's really about two things. One is to just remember by understanding. Okay, and secondly is of course you must practice. Now, let's talk about this to remember by understanding. It's a simple analogy. Let's say you are in a class, in a new class. You have a lot of new classmates. So everybody got a different name, so you remember their name. You just remember their name. Well, that is pure memorizing their name. But if you were to understand that, this person, he used to be very poor, or this person is very talkative. This person is the one that's very quiet. You have some understanding of each person. Actually, it helps you to remember their name much better. You can better identify. So same thing for mathematics. It's really about understanding for this formula, what is it used for? In what situation do we use? And then what's the purpose of using this formula? I think by doing so, I think the memorizing work, not only do you understand better, but actually become more meaningful to you. Okay, so I think that will in a way helps you to so-called memorize as a byproduct through internalizing it. And of course, it will help if you also complement with practice. Because mathematics ultimately is not like some subject like bio, like purely a lot of memory work. Actually, mathematics is really about practice. It's about application. So, for such a topic, you also need to do practice. It will help you to internalize what I mean by internalizing this formula, and that's where it become a part of you. And the chances of you forgetting this after a while is much lesser compared to just pure memorizing.
Can I also add to what Teacher James is saying? That's a great point, and I like what Teacher James just said about maths being practice-based and not memory-based. Actually, if you really stop to think, right, when you think about any other subject in JC, they are both memory and practice-based, right? On top of memorizing, you still have to practice, but maths is only practice-based, and that's something that has been my sentiment since the time I've done maths in secondary. Not so much primary, but late secondary. I always felt that maths is just practice-based, not memory-based. So that's half the workload of my other subjects. On the point of internalizing the formula, I feel like a way to do it is by coming up with something like a cheat sheet. I think a cheat sheet is a great way to internalize the formulas, because if you don't have a cheat sheet, you don't have something consolidated in front of you. What that means is, while you're revising, you're going to have interruptions. You're going to flip through your lecture notes, you're going to find for formulas. We want to minimize these interruptions with something a bit more consolidated. And actually, on that point of a cheat sheet, I look online and I see many people selling cheat sheets. On Carousel, I see teachers giving cheat sheets, and I'm like, wow, this is not the way. This is not the way to do it. Because when you buy a cheat sheet from someone, if you photocopy a cheat sheet from your friend because you're lazy to do one, what happens is you are inhibiting the process of internalizing the formula. Because the second you write the formula onto paper, you are allowing for the process of internalizing the formula. So I always tell my students, do not buy the cheat sheet. If you're going to buy the cheat sheet, it says exactly. It's as good as not doing it. Write the cheat sheet out on your own. It's been something I've done, and I would like to think I'm pretty good in maths. So I've done it. It's worked for me.
You are.
But I would think it should work for a student in JC as well. Because I did this all the way up to uni, and it's worked for
I think we
everyone.
all have the same experience as students, right? Even if we were to inherit maybe a set of notes from somebody, our seniors or whoever, it's just not your thing, you know. Yeah, it's just like let's say a piece of clothing, you just want to do some amendments to it to suit your style. It is the same for notes.
Yeah.
So you may inherit something just like the cheat sheet, but you want it to be something where you are very comfortable using it. Right. So I totally agree with Kishan that by writing it out, right, maybe in your own handwriting, and then after that you add some side notes to it, then it becomes very much your own thing. And it's easy for you to remember.
True.
Yeah.
I think the cheat sheet is really, you must customize it
Yes.
to the way you use it. Because there will be certain formula that to you, this one I keep forgetting. So you will actually do your cheat sheet in a
Some
certain way.
annotation here
Yes,
and
in a
there,
certain
right?
way that is when you read, it straight away comes to your mind. But if it's somebody else, you won't have that connection.
Especially with the visuals and all that, like the highlights and post-its. Like these are things that's going to help your in the internalizing.
Some
It's
people may
you.
put stickers
Exactly.
here and there to make it very
So,
personal so
yeah.
that you can remember better. I also understand there's a formula booklet given by the examiner, right, called the MF26. So some students ask, so why do you have to prepare all this cheat sheet when you are given the formulas, right? You can just rely on this formula booklet.
Yes.
So what is your take on this?
I think this is a question that I always hear from students. You know, why spend so much time remembering? My brain capacity already almost full already. For formula, why don't you use?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I always ask the question. Now, everybody play computer games, I believe. And when you play computer games, they also have a certain instruction or manual that tells you, okay, you have to punch, you have to kick, you must use one button, the combination button. Play soccer, then how you want to tackle, you must know how to control, right?
Are you a game
Yeah.
player? You seem to know what to do. It's
Yeah.
totally alien to
I
me.
can't relate.
I am, but I believe students will have a lot of experience in terms of playing games as well.
Yeah.
So you ask yourself, do you ever have to refer to the instruction and the manual before you then execute the thing that you want to execute? Your game's over by the time you refer to that. So it's really the same thing. I think in mathematics, as far as this formula is concerned, although the MF26 is given to you, it's really more as a reference. It's not for you to rely on it solely. Only when you need to do a question, then you start to check what is available and which one to use. You will waste a lot of time, and really you will not be able to navigate. Because a lot of times, I think when you have actually memorized all the formula very well in your mind, you only check when, in case there's something that, is it a plus or is it a minus in the formula? You just refer quickly and then you do it.
Yeah.
By not relying on MF26 and you actually memorize it, it helps you a lot in terms of navigating through the question. Because in the JC question, especially, the question not only tests you on your content, on the formula that you need to apply, they also test you on your analysis, how you actually analyze the question. So a lot of time is that in order for you to think a few steps ahead as you look at the question and formulate your approach, you do need to know your formula very well. In order for you to be able to allow you to think a few steps ahead, to then see exactly which approach should I use. And then you can actually handle the question much better and also much also faster. So that's one thing. And of course, the other thing that I want to add is that the MF26 is not everything. Actually, they don't give you all the formula. It's not exhaustive. It's not comprehensive. Actually, there are some formula that they don't really put it in, but you do need to know. So a simple answer to that is really you cannot rely on the MF26 purely just because it's given.
The analogy of the game is spot on. I'm going to use that for my students. I was very impressed, even just now when I was hearing it. Actually, on that point of MF26 and not enough formula, that's a great point, because if we were to focus on a particular example, so just say, not enough formula, give me examples. Yeah, I can give you one example right now. The chapter of vectors, students? I'm looking at you right now. The chapter of vectors, you know how massive it is, right? Let me tell you something about MF26. 2 formulas. Only 2 formulas out of that 4 weeks of content is in MF26. Clearly not exhaustive. And in addition to not being exhaustive, in the MF26, there are some formulas that are formulas that you cannot blindly copy. For example, students, I'm still again talking to you. Remember the integration formula? The one involving the ln? go back and flip to MF26. Do you see a modulus? Remember when your teacher was teaching you integrating with ln, you have to put the modulus. But the MF26 does not include the modulus in the formula sheet. It does not. It's not incorrect. You don't have to put the modulus for the given range in the MF26. But the problem is that range is not applicable to the question that you're doing, the practice question. You have to put the modulus. Students that blindly copy the formula don't get full credit for the question. So MF26 got limitations. So ultimately, you have to understand the MF26 must be used for revision, but it must be used hand in hand with the cheat sheet. They have to be used hand in hand. Cheat sheet helps you internalize the formulas. Things that are not found in MF26, things that are not completely accurate in MF26. The MF26 should be used for revision because ultimately you're going to work with this in the exam. So you want to know how to use this in the exam. So I feel my advice, or what our advice is to use the MF26 and your cheat sheet hand in hand for your revision, whatever exam you're preparing for.
So for the cheat sheets, right, I understand from you that we should personalize it, right?
Yeah.
We shouldn't just get from our seniors, inherit from somebody and just use it wholesale, right? I think as you rightly pointed out, everything is about internalizing it, right?
Yeah.
So writing it out on your own and then maybe adding some notes and all that to your cheat sheet will serves its purpose and be more meaningful to your personal needs, right? And coming to MF26, you were saying to refer to both of them, right, during your practice. So how can they get hold of this MF26? Is going to the A-level paper, sitting for the exam, the first time that they're going to see MF26 and oh dear, nothing there is, like what you say, is non-exhaustive.
Great news! It's free! It's online!
Online.
Yes!
Right.
Just
Internet is everything now.
yes!
It's really available.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just open a new tab now. Click MF26, just type that out, and you'll see it. It's right there.
So, JC students, this must be what you have on your hand, right? Practice things on
In
a
your
regular
laptop.
basis.
Mm.
Okay, that's fantastic advice.
Yep.
And I think that's all the time we have for this episode. There are still a lot of questions that we would like both of you to address. But we have to keep it for the next episode. All right. So thank you so much for your time that you have with us today, giving all the tips and all the good advice to our JC students, parents and students out there. Right. If you have benefited from this session, do join us for the next session. Right, which we will be addressing a lot more questions, and they will be more than happy to provide all the answers and all the tips. Right. So don't forget to like, comment, and share on our YouTube channel. And also, don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next episode.
Bye.